Good morning, everyone, and congratulations on having found parking and arrived here. And we are going to begin by singing number 40, The Morning Hangs a Signal. Sing it loud enough so the folks running by out front can hear us and be encouraged. Let's rise in body and spirit, number 40, The Morning Hangs a Signal. Welcome this morning. Welcome this one and radiant morning on this one and radiant earth. Welcome into this loving community of seekers where we strive to live with integrity, nurture wonder, and inspire the actions that transform us and transform the world. Welcome to the Unitarian Society of Santa Barbara. Welcome whether you are here in this room physically, whether you're joining us in our online sanctuary. We are one community under one sky. I'm the Reverend Julia Hamilton. My pronouns are she, her, and I am delighted this morning to be joined by our worship associate, Peter Hale, our music director, Matthew, who is going to be joining us on the piano this morning as well, while Heather takes a well-deserved day off. By all of you who have chosen to spend your time here to take a breath, to deepen your spirit, to be with one another on this journey of life. If you are visiting with us, we would love to get to know you better. Please join us afterward for coffee and conversation. You can click the visitor link online to let us know more about yourself or join in the chat. We would love to get to know you as you get to know us. Ask any questions you like. We do have a newcomer orientation on the second Sunday of every month, and we have a membership table out in the garden. And if you've been joining us for a while and feel like this might be your community, your spiritual home, we would love to welcome you into membership at any time. We have a few things coming up in the life of the congregation that I want to recognize. Aside from the 7,000 people enrolled in the marathon this morning that have run right past the front of this sanctuary. Yeah, we can applaud them, that's fine. How many of you, just out of curiosity, how many of you in this room have ever run a marathon? Yeah, right on. Next Sunday, we are going to be traveling with a small group from this congregation in partnership with a small group from Trinity Episcopal to the La Cobina Migrant Shelter in Mexicali. Charlotte and I will be there with some of our youth, as well as some of Trinity's youth, to bear witness, to bring some needed supplies and materials and resources, but mostly to reaffirm our interconnection, to tell the story of love and compassion, to counteract the story of hate and fear that we see all too often in our world right now. So please send with us your love and care next Sunday. While you are here, we will be there. And there are also a few concrete things you can send with us, namely towels. So if you have any towels at home, gently used is fine. Not too big and fluffy because they have to be portable. You can drop them off in the office anytime this week. And we are also looking for one more large suitcase that we can use and leave down at La Cobina. So if that happens to be something you have, stop by the front office, talk to Charlotte to answer any questions. And to raise money and support this work of our youth, both with this trip and the service trip they have coming up this spring, we are doing our annual pie auction today with the bonus that if you're hungry, there's also a bagel bar. So you can get bagels or you can order your pie that will be prepared and ready for you on the 23rd of this month, just in time for Thanksgiving. So you can check off pie baking from your busy list. Join us in the courtyard or in Parish Hall after the service to participate and support the work of our youth. I also want to lift up that coming up in November is the Transgender Day of Remembrance, a solemn day when we remember all of those whose lives have been lost due to fear and hate. And there is going to be the annual vigil at the courthouse on Thursday, November 20th at 5 p.m. And this year there is also going to be a public rally and march on Saturday, November 22nd, starting at 2 p.m. in De La Guerra Plaza. There'll be more information in your Friday email, but I just want to lift that up so you can put it on your calendars to join our friends at the Santa Barbara Transgender Advocacy Network and show our solidarity and our compassion in this world together. So please join us for those events. I invite you now to take a breath, to settle yourself wherever you are, to allow yourself to be fully present in this community as we ring our bell and let the sound connect us.
If you are participating from home, please join us for our chalice lighting by kindling your own. These words are in the form of a haiku, a type of Japanese poetry, which Reverend Julia will be talking about later in the service. As our flame is lit, we sense the darkness fleeing. Audacious hope. Every Sunday, we highlight at least one good thing that we have learned about or experienced in the past week. Today, I would like to put forward Tuesday's election, but not for the reason many of you might be thinking. Not in terms of who won or lost. After all, we don't all think alike, most of us, but not all. I wanted to talk about the spirit of the voters. For many years, my wife Donis and I have run polling stations here in Santa Barbara. At the last presidential election, the turnout was meager and lackluster. This time, with only one issue on the ballot, we were expecting the same. Whoa, were we wrong? A record number showed up. Hundreds of people eager to cast their votes. Happy to do so, personally delivering even their mail-in ballots. Many young people, some voting for the very first time. We were busy all day. Why? Citizens are sending a message. Our current political situation, regardless of your opinion, demands response, the need to do something, be counted, and we could see this happening all across the country. No one could remember more people turning out for the New York mayoral election. It made me realize that this country is in good hands. There are voices saying we have reached a tipping point for the worse. They know that people are attracted to bad news. But I saw democracy at work, and it's alive and well, rejecting cynicism and embracing the power of optimism. Audacious hope.
On many Sundays, we take a moment to greet one another, but before we do that, I want to greet someone who is joining us this Sunday for the first time, and that is our new staff member, Kiara Watson, who is our new membership and outreach manager. Kiara, where are you? There's Kiara, right there. Go ahead and welcome Kiara when you see her in the courtyard. We are delighted to bring her on to our team here at the Unitarian Society to help us connect with newcomers and reach out to the wider world to do more good in the world. Welcome. And with that, I invite you to turn to someone near you and welcome each other into this space with just a few words of greetings before we sing. I invite you all to continue these conversations after the service. I love seeing the connections that spring up among you during this time. But now we get to sing one of our most beloved hymns, Blue Boat Home. It's number 1064 in the Teal hymnal. If you want to follow along with the music, the words will also be on the screen. Please rise in body and spirit to sing Blue Boat Home.
Praise Good morning, everyone. My name is Charla Bragante. I am your Director of Religious Exploration, and it is time for kids of all ages and sizes to come on up for a story. Come join me up here on the rug. Here they come. Yeah, you can sit on the rug or on the steps. Come on up, here they come. So, do we know if we have a photo up there? Oh, good, okay. This story is called Climbing the Volcano, A Journey in Haiku. Does anyone know what haiku is? It is, Arlo. It's a kind of poetry, and there's our picture. Oh, we'll get to that in just a second. But it's a kind of poetry. It's usually 3 lines, very short, often about nature. So this whole story is written in a series of haiku poems. And it's a story of a young boy and his family who set out to climb the South Sister Volcano, one of the 3 sisters volcanoes in Oregon. And you guys might be able to see that picture. The South Sister is the one on the left. So that's the one they were gonna hike up. Looks pretty tall, doesn't it? So I'm gonna invite you now to close your eyes and imagine you are hiking up this volcano with your family, and just listen to the words of the series of haiku. And as you trek up the hills, look for tiny toads, colorful butterflies, soaring birds of prey, and other things to see and do and feel. Climbing the volcano. Dormant volcano, but at sunrise each day, it blazes. Clear morning sky, the campground cloudy with our breath. A chill in the air, mosquitoes looking for a hot drink. How do you climb a mountain? One step at a time. Dusty trail, too many footprints to count, but I add my own. A perfect blue above the treetops, tripping over roots. Rushing stream, I ask to take the steeper trail. How to stay warm in the forest shade. Swat mosquitoes. Something ahead, I crouch down and smile at tiny toads. Gray lava domes, even the youngest rocks are old. Not in a hurry, we step aside so others can pass. Out of the forest, a cold wind makes us smile. No mosquitoes. Resting at the lake, the mountain shivers in the breeze. Sunny boulder, a marmot relaxes while I trudge past. Hiker going up meets hiker coming down, each with a dog. Lunchtime, hawk floats on a thermal looking for prey. Feeling small, boulders as big as buildings. Trail mix, peanuts, almonds, chocolate scattered in the dirt. Feeling big, trees at the tree line no taller than me. I look down on soaring ravens, every feather visible. Resting our wings, a butterfly on one rock, me on another. Branching trails, I choose the one with 3 butterflies. Up here in the sky, what everyone talks about is butterflies. Trail not as steep, I think we're almost there. I made it to the summit, jumping even higher. Tiny pond like a great blue eye. the state's highest lake. Even here, floating on the updraft, butterflies. In the crater, strangers throwing snowballs. Direct hit, glacier snow melting down my cheek. The world looking like a big map of the world. The glint of cars from where we camped, not even specks. It's late and the wind is colder. Time to leave. Heading down, so much easier than climbing up. Tree line, small bits of shade from gnarled pines. Sliding fast down the snowfield that I slogged up. Resting at the lake, I was all the way up there. Who? Just us, and we're sorry we woke you up. We're back where we started, mosquitoes. Standing at dinner, my legs just won't keep still. Trying to sleep. What mountain will I climb next? And we finished our hike, so let's head out to our classes this morning.
From time to time, we invite members of our congregation to reflect on what it means to be a part of this community. And I would like to invite Anna DeStefano to come up and share her reflections with us this morning.
Good morning. I love that the order of service describes me as speaker, which Deb says I do too much of anyway, so. I'm going to take a few minutes to share with you why I agreed to be on the Capital campaign team and a visiting steward. Our Bridge to the Future campaign brings back memories of the bridge to the present that the Unitarian Society has been for me and my family. Deb and I became a couple in 1979, the last century, in St. Louis, Missouri. We were both working in educational settings, and given the time and place, we were mostly closeted. Thank God for gay bars and women's softball and soccer teams. Those settings were the opportunities and constraints of what our community could be then. Personally, at age 32, my internalized homophobia was strong. The Fielding Institute offered me a position here in 1983, and along with my adventurous and trusting partner, we moved to Santa Barbara. We knew no one here at the time. My Fielding colleagues introduced us to this congregation. We became members a month later, and it has changed our lives. The associate minister at the time was Frank Robertson, and he hosted a monthly gathering of lesbians and gay men. The BTQ plus came later. It was called Mixed Company. Our first Santa Barbara friends were in that group. A few years later, the congregation embarked on the work of becoming a welcoming congregation. Lots of small group discussions among heterosexual and gay folk, sharing stories, questions, tears. The mutual acceptance felt transformative. About a decade later, Deb and I decided to adopt a child, a 6-month-old daughter from China. The support was astonishing and full-hearted. So we decided to adopt another Chinese daughter a few years later. There were other factors too, I should say. The girls came to RE. We taught RE. We were a family among families. When it became possible for us to legally marry in 2008, we stood on this chancel, surrounded in the sanctuary by family and friends and many, many of you, as we voiced our commitment to each other. So, we belong here. I hope you know and feel that you too belong here. Not because of annual pledges or campaign gifts, but rather because we all matter to each other. We want to know who each other is, what we think, how we feel. We want to be known and accepted for our whole selves. As a visiting steward for this capital campaign, I enjoy the opportunities to get to know the members of this congregation better. I believe that were we to achieve our financial goals, but the bonds between and among us remain weak or superficial, we would have the shell of a community, but not the glue that holds us together. Thank you to all those who strengthened those bonds in the past, so my family and I could have a community where we can be seen and loved for who we are. Thank you.
I want to say that that applause that happened was this outpouring of applause for the way this community holds one another. The individual stories that come out spread and ripple in these remarkable, deep, and beautiful ways. And thank you very much for sharing yours. I invite us into a time of prayer, meditation, and reflection, a time of dropping down, of settling our restless legs after climbing mountains all week, allowing ourselves to be fully present, fully human, right here and now. And this week, I would like to honor that November 11th is Veterans Day, this Tuesday. This began as a recognition of Armistice Day in 1918, the 11th hour of the 11th day of the 11th month, when the fighting stopped, when the Great War was over, the Great War that would come to be known as World War I. In 1954, Armistice Day was changed to Veterans Day, honoring those who had fought and served in every conflict. But it is important to remember that Veterans Day has its roots in honoring peace, in honoring the ceasing of hostility, the quieting of guns, and the laying down of arms. Honoring our veterans is not just honoring how they fought and sacrificed in wartime, but also how they longed for peace and the cessation of wars in which they were deployed. So thank you, veterans, for all the ways you have served and sacrificed. Thank you for holding the hope of peace for us all. May all those lives who have been touched by war find a path back from the battlefield. And may we all recommit ourselves to the unfinished work of building peace and goodwill among the nations. May it be so. Blessed be. And amen. Let us enter into a time of quiet, a time where we can touch that deep longing for peace that resides within each of us and let it bloom among us. I have a reading that I would like to share with you this morning. It's titled, How Does Poetry Create Conditions for Radical Belonging? And it's excerpts from an essay written by Jennifer Elise Forrester, who is a Muskogee poet. And she wrote it for the Institute for Inquiry and Poetics. And isn't it great to live in a world where such a place as the Institute for Inquiry and Poetics exists? What if we listened to each other in the language of poetry? Poetry is a language of deep listening. Listening to each other in this way would be a listening that does not demand an answer, a translation, or defense. It would be a listening that acknowledges not knowing, that does not preclude the possibility of new perspectives. What is a poem but a reorganization of the perception of the known and imaginary? If we listened to each other as if we were a poem, if we listened to our nation as if we were a poem, we would hear no singular story, but a multitude. Like a prism refracting different frequencies of light, the language of the poem is multidimensional, dynamic. I think the work of poetry is about opening a space or creating the conditions for listening, a space for people to be listened to. Poetry is a space where we don't have to normalize or make sense or have the answer, where yes is also no and truth is also a question. Poetry does not hold one meaning exclusively. It does not shut out the possibilities of different meanings, different interpretations, different cultures or identities. Poetry is not a language of rejection. It is the language of imagination. I believe that the invigoration of poetic imagination in our perception and communication can parallel the growth of peace, equity, and compassion. Why? Because poetry is the condition where radical belonging occurs. It is a condition requiring plurality, reflection, motility, and transformation. Listening through the language of poetry would be a way to extend to each other and to ourselves a radical belonging. Imagine how many more voices we have yet to hear when we begin to listen. So ends our reading.
Every Sunday, we donate a portion of our offering to a cause or organization that reflects our UU values. This month, it is the Bridget Alliance, an organization explicitly dedicated to promoting abortion access and is a key part of the Access Network. It provides financial and logistical support for people who must travel long distances to obtain medical care. Please read with me the affirmation of gratitude and giving printed in your order of service or on the big screen. Let us be grateful when we are able to give, for many do not have that privilege. Let us be grateful even for gifts with us, for we are rich by their giving. Let us be grateful even for our needs, so that we may learn from the generosity of others.
I see skies of green, red roses too. I see them blue for me and you, and I think to myself, what a wonderful world. I see skies of blue, clouds of white, bright blessed day, dark sacred night, and I think to myself, what a wonderful world. The colors of the rainbow, so pretty in the sky, are also on the faces of people going by. I see friends shaking hands, saying, how do you do? They're really saying, I love you. I hear babies cry, I watch them grow. They learn much more than I will ever know. And I think to myself, what a wonderful world. Yes, I think to myself, what a wonderful world.
Thank you, Matthew. That was beautiful. What a beautiful morning this is turning out to be. Good morning to you all. So how many of you remember learning about haiku when you were in school? Right? It's kind of part of the elementary school curriculum in most places, right? Often when we're learning about syllables, they introduce that classic 5-7-5 structure. It's focus on nature, and we all sat at our tables tapping out how many beats in the word waterfall or river, trying to shoehorn our thoughts into these short, simple phrases, always wanting more syllables, right? But as with any art form, when you scratch the surface, you realize there is a whole world underneath. Haiku as a form evolved in the 17th century from a much older form of Japanese poetry, which first appeared 1,000 years earlier. And of course, the 575 syllables of the first haiku masters were written in Japanese, so trying to translate them into English and keep that same rhythm is very difficult. Modern translations don't always keep that same strict syllable count that we were taught in school. And because Japanese is a language that uses ideographic symbols instead of letters, this is another challenge in translation, where words often have multiple meanings that simply cannot be understood in English. A few years ago during the pandemic, when everything was online, I was inspired to take a haiku class on Zoom led by the Upaya Zen Center in New Mexico. I took the class primarily because I admired one of the teachers who was leading it, and I figured if she found haiku to be a rich spiritual practice, then it was worth giving it a shot. We learned the basics of the form, the way the poems usually include specific words called kigo to mark the changing of the seasons. Is this a spring haiku or an autumn haiku, she would ask. How do you tell? They mention cherry blossoms, so you know it's spring. Cherry blossom is the kigo. And there's actually books, whole lists of words divided by the seasons of the year that you can get to help you discern whether this is an autumn haiku or a summer haiku. If it mentions chestnuts, it's autumn. We also learned that haiku can be deeply spiritual and contemplative, or funny and satirical, and even a bit rowdy. There is one notable poem referencing badgers' testicles. True. And then we all wrote and we shared many terrible poems of our own creation. It was delightful. So ever since then, every now and then, when inspiration strikes, I jot down a few lines in my notebook just for the fun of it. So why am I bringing up the practice of haiku now? A month ago, I returned from this week-long walking pilgrimage on the Kumano-Kodo Trail in Japan. I shared a little bit more about that trail a few Sundays ago, and I didn't go there with the intent to practice poetry. But as with so many things in life, what you think you're going to do and what you actually end up doing are very different. Because it turns out that the practice of writing poetry is embedded into the history of that sacred trail as much as the stone steps are embedded into the side of the mountain. Poems left their traces in all kinds of places along the path. In the middle of one day, deep into the mountains, after having climbed up I don't know how many steep slopes, our guide stopped and pointed out the footprint of a foundation with no building left. There was a tea house here, she said. And I was imagining how they hauled all the material up, or did they cut it in place? Where did they get the tea? There's a tea house here, she said, where people would stop to rest and recite poetry to one another. The monks and emperors and pilgrims who were traveling on the trail would carry little notebooks tucked into their robes so that any time inspiration struck, they would have pencil and paper handy to capture their verses. Poems were written at the shrines, inspired by the gods who lived in the Komono Mountains, or in a dream visit from the Buddha. They were written to commemorate special events or visits from important people. And at night, in the inns where people would stay along the route, after dinner, and sometimes perhaps a drink or two, poets are poets in every culture, people would engage in poetry games and contests, challenging one another in this formalized back and forth style known as renga, where one person would start the traditional 5-7-5 form, and another person would have to respond with 2 7-syllable lines, and then back and forth, often with the goal of composing 100 verses. There would be people designated as scribes and others designated as judges who might disqualify a verse, or prompt you to do a rewrite, or determine who won the night. It's something to imagine, isn't it, this poetic battle of wits taking place 1,000 years ago in the rural mountains of Japan. Poets as famous as pop stars are today. I imagine these evenings were not unlike the poetry slams or rap battles that we might be familiar with now. So in the spirit of this, in the spirit of all of the poems composed along the path of what we learned as we were journeying, some of us in the group I was traveling with took up the practice of composing haiku as we walked and sharing them with one another along the way or at the end of the day over dinner. It wasn't quite the 100-verse poetry slam that it might have been 1,000 years ago. And we didn't share these poems because we thought they were any good, necessarily. We shared them because they connected us to the natural world, to the stories and histories we were learning about on the trail, and to each other. It was a way of paying attention, of asking, did you notice the dragonflies over the water? Did you see the way the trees were so tall and straight? Or the way the ferns curled out over the path? Haiku is often known as one-breath poetry because it is so short it can be read in a single breath, making it ideal for sharing on a strenuous hike when we often had to stop and catch our breath on a particularly long slope. Stopping for a moment to share a few lines of poetry was a great excuse to step off the trail and take a break. Writing haiku in my head, counting the syllables with my steps, trying to find just that right word or phrase, I found myself returning to very simple questions again and again. Where am I right now while I breathe this one breath? When am I? What is the season of this moment? The natural season of the world around me as well as the changing season of the life within me. What is around me? What or who am I sharing this moment with? On the low river, dragonflies have arrived. The sun sets so soon. My favorite poem was inspired when one of my walking companions developed a blister, and eventually we had to stop because it was bothering her so much, and we had to search out a Band-Aid from my pack and take off her shoe and patch up the problematic toe. And so after we resolved the problem and walked on in silence for a bit, I shared with her the poem that emerged. On the Kumano, a blister on your small toe becomes the whole world. Some of you who've had blisters understand what that means. The practice of writing and sharing these poems with each other was a way of answering a question I didn't even know I had when I set out on this journey. A question I didn't even know I had until I came home and found that essay that I shared the reading from just earlier, where the writer begins by asking, what if we listened to each other in the language of poetry? What if we listened to each other in the language of poetry? What would happen if we practiced listening like that, listening to each other, listening to the world itself with the attention of a poet rather than getting stuck in everyday prose, in the explaining and demanding and proclaiming and tweeting and arguing language that we have become so accustomed to? Poetry is a language of deep listening, she says. Listening through the language of poetry would be a way to extend to each other and to ourselves a radical belonging. Through the practice of writing and sharing poetry, just 3 simple lines, a radical belonging was formed. Walking through the mountains, letting the river speak, noticing the changing light, this cultivated a sense of what a Buddhist would call interbeing with the world, a feeling of unbreakable relationship, of belonging. Even thousands of miles from home, immersed in a culture and language very different from my own, even in these unknown spaces, I belonged. I was not separate from the world. The pilgrims on the trail, no matter where they came from, were welcomed. We heard this over and over again from our guide, from the signs along the way. The pilgrims were welcomed. They belonged on that trail. Listening to the world through the language of poetry, we step outside of patterns of consumption and exploitation, of domination and extraction. We collapse that hierarchy that puts humans at the top of the food chain, and we recognize a much more relational truth, that we are part of a vast plurality of being, that we can ask questions without needing answers, that we can hear stories in languages we may not understand but still know to be true. And there was also a way we started to belong to each other in this practice. Noticing the world meant also noticing each other as part of that world. Who was limping from a blister? Who had a sack of mandarin oranges that they had just bought from a roadside stand and was ready to share over lunch? Who was eagerly awaiting the news of the birth of twin grandchildren back home? And taking the risk of sharing what we created, this was also an act of deep belonging. It was astonishing how nervous I was at first just to say out loud those little 17 syllables that had been rattling around in my head. Would I be judged? Would they laugh? Would they think I was being pretentious, or worse, would they be bored? I had taken one online class about an art form that people study for a lifetime. Who was I to be talking about haiku at all? But after we took the risk, encouraged each other, carefully extracted the poems from our inside to our outside, like a kindergartner shyly holding up that painting they made at school, I realized that we didn't need the poems to be good or polished or finished, or even make sense. Because most of the time, we didn't explain them to one another at all. We took the risk of letting our poems stand as stories by themselves. It was allowed that perhaps our poems might be unexplainable. It was allowed that perhaps we ourselves might be unexplainable. As the essayist wrote, poetry is a space where we don't have to normalize or make sense. Poetry is not a language of rejection. It is the language of imagination, where yes and no can coexist, where the spirit doesn't have to conform to the limits of another person's understanding. Letting go of that need to be understood was incredibly freeing as well as grounding, not in the language of a rugged individualist, go it alone kind of way, not in the language of rejection. But when you let go of the need for conformity or explainability, it is in that unexplainable space between us that we often feel the deepest sense of connection. That place where we embrace the poetic possibility of the other person, the possibility that the other person in front of us is as real as we are, even if we don't fully understand them, or even when we ourselves are not fully understood. We can be in that space together anyways. Listening to one another in the language of poetry, perhaps for some people this is the definition of the way God perceives the world. Perhaps we are all sacred poems, holy mysteries, texts readable only in translation, that can be interpreted but never fully understood. And whether you believe in God or not, listening to one another in this way, as irreducible poetry and not fully explainable prose, this has the capacity to liberate and transform our relationships with one another, moving us away from being put into categories that never seem to capture our full humanity into this space where we are allowed to be more than one story at a time. As the poet Walt Whitman said, we contain multitudes. And this was perhaps the biggest and most transformative lesson that I took home with me from that pilgrimage. that we do not have to be fully understood to be loved, to be accepted, and to be honored as fellow travelers in the world. There is a radical sense of belonging in that. A radical sense of belonging that comes when you realize you don't have to be fully understood to be loved. That you are a holy mystery, a sacred poem, a text in translation, and you are loved and held by the world just as you are, without needing any explanation. Now, don't get me wrong, it is okay to want to be understood, to want to be known, to want to feel familiar to someone, like family, right? That root word, familiar and family. To feel that sense of familiar, that's human too. But there's also a way in which all of us are more than anyone will ever understand, perhaps even more than we ourselves will ever understand, no matter how many years we spend with an amazing therapist. And radical belonging, not familiarity, not friendship, not romance, which are all wonderful things, by the way, but radical belonging is what happens when we are accepted even when we don't make sense. Even when our language is unclear, our motivations misunderstood, or our poetry unexplainable. Radical belonging is what we offer to each other when we learn to love without needing to own someone else's truth. When we learn to love without needing the answers to all of our questions. When we let go of that need for clarity in all things, when we become comfortable with ambiguity, we claim this deeper connection to our shared humanity. When we belong to each other like that, when we feel a deep belonging to the world like that, when we experience that sense of unshakable interbeing, something transformative happens. We start to share more of ourselves, knowing that it will be accepted with compassion and care instead of judgment. Radical belonging gives us permission to just be. It offers up the freedom to be present and share fully, because we know that whatever we reveal in that moment, whatever short breath of haiku we are in that moment, it will not be confused with the entirety of our being. We are all so much more. Whether or not we can carry a tune or write a poem or any other single point in that vast constellation of ourselves. We can be held by the world. We can hold space for each other in all our complexity without having to explain it at all. I would like to close with a poem by the 14th century monk Muso Soseki titled Incomparable Verse Valley. The sounds of the stream splash out the Buddha's sermon. Don't say that the deepest meaning comes only from one's mouth. Day and night, 80,000 poems arise, one after the other. And in fact, not a single word has ever been spoken. May it be so. Blessed be, and amen. Let us sing together one of my favorite songs, Rising Green. It is number 1068 in the Teal hymnal. Please rise in body and spirit, Rising Green. So stay right where you are, whether you're here or at home. If you have permission here in the room to hold hands with the person next to you, or you can put your hands over your heart if you prefer, or hold your hands open. However it is that you get sense of being connected to that rising green that comes up out of the earth and holds us all. And as you go out into this beautiful and heartbreaking world, may the light of love shine upon you, out from within you, be gracious unto you, and bring you peace. For this is the day we are given. Let us rejoice and be glad in it. And let us call out a blessing.